All right, I'm recording this, so we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Well,
Oh, more of them.
are you going to like exit or what? Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Wow, dang, they're like busting me up here. Did they destroy our vehiculars? No, they didn't.
Um,
Yay. Our vehiculars are not destroyed.
bye.
I figured since you had good sound, maybe we could like cruise over to a building for a minute or two.
Well, I want to be outside my vehicle when we do this because I can't hear you over the music of my vehicle so
No,
well.
that's cool. That's cool. I just thought we'd find a
But,
vehicle to get away from those snot noses. I mean, it's find a
all right.
building to get rid of us.
Take us to a skyscraper. I don't
It's
care which.
skyscraper! Woohoo!
Like the Wicked Witch of the West.
I'll get you, my dog, and you're pretty too. See here. Nice landing
Looks pretty good to me.
More.
There.
There. Good. We're good.
And I've chainsaw and everything, so.
So you've read Schwala de Lubix.
Yes, I have actually. I read him and his disciple, West, whose first name I can't remember, but who wrote the book The Serpent in the Sky.
Oh yeah, is that
Traveled the
Anthony?
Sky to ancient Egypt.
Anthony
West, thank you.
Yeah, they're pretty brainy.
I think they are actually. I mean, the Egyptians were obsessed. Hey, why are you doing that to me? The Egyptians were obsessed with ancient mathematics, and I also think that Egyptian religion is a cross between Stone Age and drug culture.
Drug culture?
Well, I mean, literally, they actually did. I mean, they induced themselves into a frequent drug state in order to understand the will of the gods, which was not uncommon in
Right.
Stone Age world.
Yeah, there's a whole book on that. I think. What is it called? It's called. I think it's called actually just Drugs in the Ancient World or something like that. But I forget the author. I have to find it. But he actually makes a really good case for the idea that they were using it in the Eleusinian mysteries, pro sure. Probably elsewhere too, especially the mushrooms.
Because they grow everywhere.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't a practice that went way, way back, even to Neolithic times or earlier, you know.
Well, the Oracle of Delphi did.
Uh-huh. Yeah, didn't she use? She burned mistletoe or something. I think.
I don't remember. I actually thought that at Delphi they sat on top of volcanic vent and nailed feet.
Oh, maybe it was that too. I don't know for
But
sure.
somebody burned mistletoe. I do remember somebody was burning mistletoe.
Yeah, and they got high. But it's strange in our culture where we now we completely ban such things and we don't understand how they used to be used. The only real remnant of that sort of thing in any religious practice is the use of frankincense.
Taken as a whole, I think it's good that we don't try and communicate to God through drugs because the way it actually worked out is just pretty heinous.
No, I agree. It's more like Altered States, like the movie Altered States.
That one for long.
That's a freaky movie.
Yes, it is. It was a good movie.
Yeah, it was.
Yes, a very freaky movie.
Yeah, freaky ass movie. But the use of drugs was ubiquitous up until probably till Christianity, I would suspect. And even in early Christianity, they seem to have used it in some cases anyway. But yeah, did you ever see the movie The Witch?
People were doing that.
Did you ever see the movie The Witch?
I can't remember.
Okay, done by the same guy that did The Northman, and also did The Lighthouse.
Okay, I have not seen The Witch. Then I'm
Good
sure
movie.
At this point.
I recommend it. It's a film that is disturbing but very thought-provoking too, because the main character in there, just the premise, family in the Puritan America, they get exiled from the community and they have to live out in the boonies, scraping a living and starving to death out in the hinterlands and the main character is a young girl who gets accused of being a witch by the mistress of the house. And you're never sure whether she is a witch, or whether it's they're starving to death, or whether it's the, what do they call that disease that infected wheat and corn?
Ergot.
Yeah, whether it's ergot poisoning. You're not really sure.
So they're having all these terrible visions that are showing
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Yeah, and they blame her, and then, they start turning on one another, and it is like a horror movie. There's some horror movies that are just done really well. That one is.
Yeah, ones that aren't where the boogeyman just jumps out.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
Yeah, so like, what is it? 20 hours later, 28 days later, or whatever.
The zombie film.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that was well done.
Very, very disturbing film.
It was disturbing.
In general, I don't like zombie films. Because mostly I am so offended by the implausibility of dead and still walking around. But that one was plausible because it didn't go for that mechanic.
Yeah, it's always like, here's a rotting corpse that could overpower a full-grown, muscular, healthy human. Yeah, sure. We'll go ahead.
It doesn't work that way, Sure. When they're dead, they really do stop moving around.
Yeah, they do. Surprising. There's a really good book that was written by the... Yeah, I know. Zombies are, as a premise, kind of dumb. But...
No. I mean, like, historically, when the United States did military action making back in the 1930s, that was the first time anyone in the U.S. military had to face the kind of poisoning that actually does induce zombie-like effects.
Is that right?
It's a blend. I don't know what's in all of it, except that one of the components is the pufferfish toxin. And they put a bunch of other things. If you got into a person's food, then they'll go to sleep at first, but when they wake up a few hours later, they're in a violent rage and will attack anything in sight for hours.
Was this done intentionally in order to try and see if they could weaponize it?
Yeah, it was done intentionally. It was like the guerrilla warfare against the U.S. that were there at the time when we were propping up yet another dictator well, Haiti had nothing but dictators. I mean,
yeah, right, exactly. And was before the CIA was formed?
Yeah, this I think is contemporary with Papa Doc Duvalier.
Good.
I think it was back in his time, but I'm having trouble remembering timelines tonight.
Yeah, he was a piece of work. I know that there was a use of LSD on young soldiers to see what the effects were, but that was until the 60s, I think.
Yeah, that's what the CIA was working with. One of the several things were the MK Ultra project.
Yep, that's the one.
Which, as heinous as it actually was attempted.
Yeah, a lot of heinous things attempted, right? Yeah, the zombies as a actual thing are probably very implausible. Aside from that kind of drug that you're talking about, or what's the one the Flakka drug that we're seeing now. But with Flakka or with bath salts, people aren't corpses. That's what's so dangerous, is that they're out of their mind.
The drug induces insanity.
Yeah, right.
Makes you act zombie-like, but you're not there.
And insanity and great ones must not unwatched to go, as Claudius says in Hamlet.
A good line.
Yes, it is.
It troubles me with the current fentanyl going all over the country and to the various variations of how much psychological damage, I mean at the physical level, permanent psychological damage that one's going to do to people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's a bad one. I think the Flakka is a bad one. I think there are a lot of really, really bad drugs that are going around in the subcultures of America right now. And
there's scary. Like street chemistry.
Yep. Yeah, it's horrible.
Yes, it's a very bad business. Long-term effects are going to be awful, I think.
Yes. Well, there are many ways that I think we're ruining our Western culture. So, just let me count the ways. 1,000. 2 1,000. But I'm with you. I'm glad that we don't use drugs in religion anymore. I'm definitely for that. I know that people who have done LSD have said that they tap into the very same phenomenon, even though they never met each other, which I find intriguing. And I know that we still use some type of drug, like frankincense is a drug in mass, in church, which that's fine. But yeah, I just think what I was getting at was that the use of it in the ancient world, they didn't use it recreationally. It wasn't like, oh, I think I'll get high, and go burn some mistletoe. It was always done in a way to contact another world or a godlike world. They considered it that way. And I wonder sometimes with our recreational use of it, whether that abuse of it is more horrible than the ubiquity of it in a religious sense.
That people are taking it like in order to get in contact with the sense of divine that they've otherwise lost?
No, that people are taking it in order to get high, and they're becoming addicted to it and ruining their lives and their health. Mainly because they are despairing of this world and they have no sense of purpose anymore. And the biggest thrill for them is to get zapped rather than to actually live a life in this conscious world. That's what I'm disturbed by.
Yeah, that's really quite pathetic.
Yeah.
You ask what's the point of your life when you're doing that? And
Yeah. So it's more like I think it's more a question of just like the hopelessness, the ennui of the modern world rather than the actual drugs themselves. I really am against the use of it. I'm not for it. I think it's interesting that in the ancient world they did use it as a sort of spark for getting in touch with the divine. I highly doubt that every Athenian had like a crack bowl on his mantelpiece.
I think that's why Alpha stood out amongst the others and was worse than so many, because he was one of the only ones that did have a crack.
Is it Alcibiades? Is that what you say? Alcibiades?
Yeah, Alcibiades. Wasn't he famous as a drug user?
Oh yeah, and an alcoholic.
And
all kinds of stuff.
A libertine, shall we call it?
Yes, a libertine.
Which vices did he not have?
He didn't torture people.
Okay, that one's not recorded.
No one's ever reported that in Steelport.
Yeah, there's no instances of torture going on in Steelport because they don't catch it. It's like there's no such thing as property damage auto.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Don't blow yourself off the building again, okay?
What?
Don't blow yourself off the building again.
Well, I promise not to.
But no, back to the subject that I was getting at earlier, which is the mathematics. The Egyptians certainly did use drugs and certainly did have this obsession with mathematics. And I hate to say it, I have the same obsession. I don't use drugs, but I have the same obsession.
Yeah, you see patterns in the world.
Yes, but I've also been studying esoteric mathematics since I was in my 20s. And so for 30 years now, I've been reading all these different books on it. And I never thought of myself as an authority until I suddenly realized.
Do you do it because you see the mathematical relationships as like the forms of like angel words?
Like you talked about? No, I know you've talked about that before. We don't necessarily have to go into it, but
I have, and when I see it, I don't see it precisely in those mathematical forms. I don't.
Yeah.
It's not what it's like.
No, that's we'll get to that in just a minute, because that intrigues me too. But no, it's not that. It's more, on the one hand, I find it really, really interesting. It's fascinating, right? I got started with it with Robert Lawler back in my 20s, and with John Mitchell back in my 20s.
He wrote that book about Atlantis, right? Robert Lawler did.
That's Mitchell.
The city.
Mitchell, View Over Atlantis.
Mitchell.
Yep. Lawler wrote the book on geometry, and Lawler was kind of weirdo. A lot of these guys are weirdos. They're brilliant, but they're weirdos. So Lawler, for instance, was into all sorts of other stuff, which is highly unmentionable. But he wrote a fantastic book on sacred geometry. Probably because they're English, and when English go nuts, they go really nuts. It's a different kind of nuts than American nuts, It's like
You're talking about English going nuts. What do you mean?
There's American nuts and there's English nuts. What's the guy?
At the moment, I think that I'm not in a position to defend the sanity of the English. Now, am I?
Yes, no, hardly. Well, I'm sure there's Scottish nuts too. It's like, I'm nuts and I'm Scottish, and it's all right.
Get out of here, Clay. What are we getting?
That's right. But No, the English, when they go nuts, it's like Alan Moore. You look at Alan Moore, and the guy's like, that guy's effed up. So, I mean, he's a genius.
The wreck of a once great artist.
Yeah, he's a genius. He's absolutely brilliant in terms of his creativity and his artistic ability, but good Lord, is he nuts. I saw him on a video the other day about how to write great stories, and I'm sure he could tell you how to write great stories, but...
Well, he has actually done some really good work.
Yeah. And you look at him now and you say, I'm sure you could tell me, but you look like you'd probably eat me afterwards. So. No, but my obsession with it was on the one hand because it was just so interesting. I was just really interested in the mathematics. And then the other thing that really obsessed me about it was the connection to historical changes. And it was only just recently, like within the last 5 years maybe, that I looked onto the Scholastic debate, that I actually found out about it, and that's why I brought it up. And it's a major cataclysm in Western culture. It's the thing that set us on the road to modernity, and it's a tremendous crash of the system, basically. And the reason for that is because
it's really what brought the medieval thought to a crashing halt.
It absolutely, but it's also what brought on modernity. It is the collapse of the Scholastic debate is the reason for the Enlightenment. We'll put it that way. And
not a good thing, as it turns out.
no, well, I mean, it's a mixed bag. It's a Mephistophelian bargain, or Faustian bargain. You get a lot of good out of it, but you also get a lot of really not so good, and it's hard to say which one outweighs the other. Like you said, I wouldn't want to live in a medieval world because of the just the struggle to stay alive. I mean, Jesus, the 1300s.
Materially, we got a lot better. Materially, we did.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
culturally, we've gotten ourselves to the point, and this is just the natural progression of it, where we're looking at replacing the population because they're not good enough
With machines.
So, yeah, the whole
Yeah.
transhumanism thing is
Right.
is we're just not good enough.
Right, and I
And
don't
the
know if
weird thing is, there's a lot of transhumanism I approve of, as long as you remain human afterwards.
Yeah, right. Detroit, become human or whatever. It's I don't know if you followed the thing recently of the art that's being created by computers.
Yes, I have actually been looking at it.
It's messed up. It's
I
messed up.
have not joined in on it, but I've seen both results, some of the algorithms, and what people have been saying about it as well.
Yeah, it's messed up. I don't know. It's not what I consider art, certainly, and it isn't art in the sense of something that's created by a human mind to express the human condition.
Well, it's interesting because the pictures themselves all strike me as having been created by an alien mind.
Yes, right.
And the
Absolutely.
reason that struck me as interesting is because of the development in computer played the game Go.
Oh, they like the
computer,
Japanese?
chess.
Yeah, okay.
Well, right now the two best Go players in the world are computers, which these two computers just keep playing endless games against each other because mathematicians are studying the patterns they do. And the strategies they're doing are alien, but they seem to defy any normal rules of the game, but they always win. And so people who have looked at it said it's like looking at an alien mind.
That is an alien mind.
Figuring it out.
Okay, so here's a theory.
It's not human.
Here's a theory. All right. You and I and everyone alive, in the West at least right now, are deeply influenced by events and ways of thinking that stretch back thousands, if not millions of years. Okay? That's my theory. I have no way to confirm it definitely. But we think a certain way because our ancestors, some 2 million years ago or whatever it is, did something, right? Let's run it a little closer to home. 12,000 years ago, our ancestors did X, and therefore we think the way we do. And that is so deep in our consciousness that we can't actually know that it's happening. It's the framework, it's the OS system that we are not aware of. And if that OS system crashes, right, we are in deep doo-doo. But if something else is created by that OS system, it won't necessarily have the same OS system because we're not aware of our OS system, so we can't impart it to some other thing. So that other thing is going to be totally alien. It's going to have its own deep OS system. Formed over years and years.
I follow you on that point.
Formed over years and years of experience. So remember in Tron? Remember Tron, the movie, the first one, the good one, not the shitty one.
Actually, a very good movie. Tron was.
Yeah, not the shitty one.
It's a very good movie.
The good one.
No, the good one.
Yeah, and in Tron, the master control program is actually based on a chess program originally. And over years has accumulated lots of data, as he even said, I'm not just one program, I've accumulated data over years, you know. But when he crashes, when he's defeated, all that's left is the original chess program, right? So imagine if...
retires.
Yeah, imagine if hypothetically... Oh, and this gets back to that movie, Altered States, right? Imagine if you could strip away all the accumulated knowledge that you have inherently in your personality right now, to get back to the very core. You know, we think we're getting back to the core when we get to our core self, but it's not really. I mean, it's more, that's just what we want as our core. But our core self is really something we can't get at because it's so deeply ingrained in us we don't even know it's happening. Isn't that odd?
Well, I actually very much agree with your premise. I think that a great deal of what we think of as logic is actually our biological patterns.
Okay.
And it's the irrational biological patterns, but we accept them so deeply we regard them as logical axioms.
Right. Right. So, for instance, even the expectation of harmony or beauty or proportion, the expectation of patterns in Go, for instance, or the expectation that X or Y is going to happen, those are all part of that deep ingrained OS system in human beings.
Yeah. Have you ever sat and thought what it would be like if you were dealing with an intelligence that didn't make similes? Didn't say that one thing.
Say that again.
Did say that. Similes. We say that one thing is like another.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Or sometimes we even go further. We say that one thing is another. That guy, he's just a beast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's not actually a beast. We're saying one thing is another, and we accept it as true.
Mm-hmm.
But it is so irrational when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, there's a reason we accept it as true, because, in my opinion, it correlates to something that, at the deep biological level, we understand.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That girl, she's a fox.
She's a fox, man. Yeah. No. Okay.
She's not a literal fox. She isn't.
Ding, 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 ding. Pow, 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 pow. Okay, so you're playing right into my hands here, and it's not my intention. It's just funny that it's happening that way. Human beings think in terms of allegory. Allegory is one of the bases for our entire thought system. Similes, metaphors, language, all of it has to do with allegory because we automatically think this is like that, and we do so in order to simplify or to communicate or to comprehend deeper on something. That's just how we operate. So this is what happened in the Scholastic realm, okay? One of our most simple ways of doing this is the mathematics. Mathematics is itself a language. It's a language of allegory, wherein the mind of God and the organization of the universe is expressed through geometric or numerical systems. And in the medieval world...
relationships.
Exactly. And it's vast, and it's incredibly complex, and it's very, very beautiful. Mathematics is a gorgeous system. And during the medieval era, they had inherited something which had been around for thousands of years, which was this idea of the logos. You know, the logos was the pattern or the tapestry of all this interconnected mathematics, which kept shifting and altering, but always went back to a basic mathematical patterned system. And that mathematics, that logos, was the system that governed the entire universe and governed human beings. you can understand it, you can comprehend it, and therefore you can comprehend the being that was beyond it, God, in order to eventually, hopefully, become one with God. So Christianity had inherited that. And here they were, trucking along until the 1300s, the 1200s, 13th century. And here's what happened in the 1200s. There's a character named Peter Abelard, right? And he was, Peter Abelard, he was the first and foremost of the nominalists. That is, he proposed, and Anselm got him totally wrong, by the way. Anselm thought that he was just being a fool by denying the existence of God. He completely misunderstood Abelard's argument, I think. Abelard was saying, this is a beautiful system, logic, theology, philosophy, mathematics, it's a gorgeous system. But there's one problem. What if it doesn't connect to anything else beyond our mind? That is, what if we as humans don't actually recognize patterns? We create patterns in order to understand the world. But there is no actual pattern out there. There is no skein or logic or logos or even a being beyond it. That's Abelard's argument. And the minute you do that, you completely pull the rug out from under the system, which is the deep OS system of human beings. Because, of course, if our mathematical system doesn't correspond to anything beyond this world, neither does our linguistic system, nor do our recognition of connections and patterns in the world. They don't correspond actually to anything. They're merely imposed for our convenience. You see the problem?
Yeah, I do, and it's like trying to stare into the concept of zero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Terrifying concept.
Yeah. It's like trying to gnaw your own teeth. That's why I'm saying. First off, I think that this is really an intriguing concept. That maybe our actions and thoughts are so pre-governed, predetermined by things that have happened thousands of years ago that we don't even recognize that that's happening. Right? It's not a bad thing. It's just that's the way we are. But second, if that system is yanked out from us, it's very bad. I mean, that's a system crash, right? And I think that's what happened there in the 1200s. I think that Muslims were so terrified of it. I think it was happening in the Muslim world. I think they were so terrified of it that they shut down all the schools of thought there in Baghdad because they saw it as a huge threat. I
remember the name of the philosopher Muslim theologian who go no further.
Oh, who would pursue that idea?
No. There was a particular man whose name I'm backing out. He's often raised as a contrast to Thomas Aquinas, who said that we can incorporate the thought of the ancient world and it will become compatible with Christianity. His Muslim colleague came to exactly the opposite. His Muslim colleague is not exactly contemporaneous with Aquinas. He's 100 years before that.
Okay, was that the commentator that he refers to on Aristotle?
No.
Okay.
He's not someone that Aquinas refers to.
All right. So it's not Averroes.
No, it's not Averroes. I think Averroes was quite profound.
Yeah.
It's not Averroes. It's a more unusual name.
Okay. I'll have to look it up, but I have a vague knowledge of what you're talking about. I think Aquinas absolutely understood this argument, but he didn't pursue it. In the Summa Theologia, in the question of whether God exists, it's the very first question he addresses. He goes against Anselm, and he says that the very problem of self-evident truth is that a thing can be self-evident in itself. Like a triangle is a shape that has three sides. That's self-evident because three sides is a triangle, and a triangle is three sides. But if it isn't self-evident to the individual, then it's not self-evident, and that's the very problem. Is that
the individual who does not see a triangle having three sides?
The individual who doesn't see that the triangle or the three sides have any correspondence to something beyond this world.
Okay.
That's what he was getting at. He was getting at the very problem that Abelard brought up, I think.
Extracting the triangle on paper to anything else. triangles, for example, which
Yeah.
is actually quite a huge leap.
Yes,
to
it
do
is.
so. To say that this, like if you're navigating a ship, this triangle on paper somehow represents whether we're going to crash into the rocks or not. It's a big jump to make.
Yeah, it is. It is a big jump to make. Or if you look around in nature, where do you see triangles? I mean,
Mountains.
Mountains, maybe. The rays of the sun, maybe. But not a lot of
No,
triangles.
in nature I see circles, right angles,
Yeah.
hexagons. I do see hexagons in
Yeah.
nature.
And
You're right, there
fractals.
aren't
There's
that many.
fractals all over.
Okay, you see fractals. Fractals are there a lot.
Yeah. But you'd be hard pressed to find
spirals.
triangles. But I mean, that's whether one does or not. I mean, the real issue would be even beyond this world is that if a person doesn't, if the allegory doesn't work, if the allegory breaks down, that this is no longer analogous to anything beyond this world, then it's just merely human made up. Now, like I like to point out all the time to my students, I say that nominalists are not the same thing as atheists. We have to be very careful on that, because atheists are people that outright deny the existence of this thing at all. But a nominalist doesn't deny its existence. They just say that it's different. It's not corresponded to something beyond this world. It's when we talk about these things, we talk about them as sort of the complexity of the human mind, or a simplification of a very complex subject. And we do that all the time with words. I know that because when we have a word can encompass, like love, right? You say love. Well, love encompasses so much, but you can't say all that so much, you know.
It's a very sloppy word in English.
It's a very sloppy word. Yeah. Could you be more precise with your word?
Well, I mean, if one's talking about your children, you can say, "I love my children," and that engages an entire emotional range.
Yeah.
But you also have a good bacon cheeseburger in front of you. You say, "I love that bacon cheeseburger," which also has a large emotional range attached to it.
It does indeed.
But it's a very different emotional range attached to your children
Yes.
than the bacon cheeseburger.
Very.
And I guess that's a good specimen where sometimes the nominalists would say, I guess, that the pattern doesn't mean.
Yeah, it's not.
And I'm actually pretty comfortable with that notion.
Yeah. Well, the problem with it, as I see it, is really not so much what the nominalists were saying. It's that the attempt to prevent the apparent atheism of nominalism causes a split between two halves of the human brain. Okay. I think that as humans, we think constantly as nominalist realists. You know, the other camp is the realists. They say everything corresponds to something beyond this world. But I think as humans, we don't think that way. We go through stages of nominalism and stages of realism. We kind of oscillate back and forth all the time, and that's natural. There's a great koan in Japanese mythology, I think it's Japanese, where the monk comes to see the sacred relic, and he's holding his staff in his right hand, and he looks at the relic and he says, "It's a piece of wood." And he shifts the staff to his left hand, and he says, "There's the relic." You know, and I think
I understand the point of that.
Yeah. That's exactly what I think is the natural human state of things. We're never fully nominalist or fully realist. But the problem that really happened, it wasn't just that nominalists were beginning to think these thoughts, because I think that those thoughts have been around for a long time. They just hadn't been entertained because they didn't seem to go anywhere at the time. But when they got split, because there was a condemnation of Paris in 1277, a guy named Archbishop Tempier. And Tempier decided he had enough of those guys. Sorry?
You and I were talking about Tempier a couple episodes ago.
Yeah. And he'd gotten sick of it. He's like, no more. So we're not going to have this talk anymore. And so he stopped the talk. And as soon as he stopped the talk, all the nominalists basically fled from Paris and from England, from Oxford. And they fled to Germany. And because Germany was having problems with the Pope already because of the whole investiture thing that had occurred, in the 1100s and then 1200s. they welcomed these nominalists, and the nominalists helped to build the universities there in Germany, including Wittenberg. And Wittenberg is famous because its second graduating class had one guy named Martin Luther.
Did he do anything, Martin Luther?
Oh, maybe one or two things. He nailed some feces to a door.
I believe that his direct descendant, if I recall correctly, from why man?
You're getting
Who
old.
was the Nazi propagandist?
Oh, yeah. Did the Will to Power, for instance, Riefenstahl? Riefenstahl?
No, not Riefenstahl.
Oh, Heinrich Himmler?
Goebbels.
Yeah,
Goebbels was direct descendant.
Goebbels was a
Isn't
Martin
that
Luther
interesting,
descendant.
yeah?
Get out of town.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
It's like you follow family lineages throughout this world, and you find the most interesting connections between.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I got bamboozled this morning. I was looking for Felix Mendelssohn because Elijah. The readings were about Elijah today, so I wanted to hear Elijah. So I typed in Felix Mendelssohn, and what did I get? I got Sweet Leilani and the Hawaiian Serenade, and I'm like, wait a minute, Felix Mendelssohn wrote Sweet Leilani? You know the song, Sweet Leilani, Queen of the Islands. Chris Isaac, sings it.
I do know the song.
Yeah, Bing Crosby sang it.
Mendelssohn wrote that.
Well, that's what I said. I said, wait, Mendelssohn wrote that? Okay, so here's the deal. I looked it up. It is Felix Mendelssohn, but it's Bartholdy Felix Mendelssohn. Lived from 1903 to 1960 something. His parents.
I find this more plausible now.
Yeah. His parents, who were Jewish, they claimed direct descendants from Felix Mendelssohn, and so they named their son Bartholdy Felix. Last name was Mendelssohn. And what's funny about the story too is that Bartholdy Mendelssohn had very little musical talent. He could hardly play guitar, couldn't really sing. He would normally just stand there with a Hawaiian lei around his neck and in a white suit and keep time for his orchestra. But the attraction was, first off, he could write music, and second, he had these beautiful Hawaiian girls that would dance at the concerts that he gave, so people came to hear him. So anyway, yeah, that's the origin of the Hawaiian Serenade by Felix Mendelssohn. He wrote Elijah, he wrote piano concertos, and he wrote the Hawaiian Serenade. Anyway, funny. I don't know how I got off on that topic, but there it is.
Because you were saying that the University of Wittenberg had a famous graduate.
Oh yeah, Martin Luther. Yeah, right.
His
right.
graduate had a descendant.
Yeah, Martin Luther. Okay, so so anyway, stop it.
Sorry.
So yeah. So anyway, the nominalists, they all went to Germany, and when you do that, when you split opposite sides of a conversation, both sides tend to metastasize.
Kind of like what's happening in our current political world.
Precisely. I think it's the same. I think it's the same event repeating itself in a lot of ways. It's no longer liberal and conservative talking with each other, or to be more precise, it's no longer progressive and conservative. People that are of goodwill on the other side of the political fence, no longer talking. Split because of media and because intentionally split, and because they just can't get along. But whatever the case, they're metastasizing, and I think that's what happened back there in the 1300s. And you can't have an event like what happened in 1277 followed then by a series of really bad catastrophes and come out on the other end all sausage-like. They had the shift to Avignon. They had the freezing, the Little Ice Age and the starvation of 1315. They had the plague of 1345. They had the 100 Years' War that started up during that time period. You had the Peasants' Revolt that occurred finally in the late 1300s. So you got all these events that happen, and it's like, I think there's a lot there that drove people to think maybe our God is punishing us or has abandoned us or whatever it is. But really the conversation, the scholastic conversation, just ceased, just stopped.
Which
and
is a bad thing.
It's a bad thing.
Because
Yeah.
You said that the world shifts sometimes with some nominalism, and by the way, this is on that point. It shifts back and forth, but it shifts back and forth because sometimes you need one or the other to stay alive.
Yeah.
And the first law is life.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. And the one kind of needs the other side to bounce ideas off, to tell them they're not nuts, that kind of thing.
Sometimes you need more of one than the other.
Yes.
But you never go without both to some degree.
Well, I think of another
thing. Sometimes I need to use my brain more, and sometimes I need to use my heart more.
Yeah.
I think I can do without my brain.
Yeah.
I mean, some people actually do go without their brain.
Yeah.
You take my point.
I do. Yes, I do take your point. I think it took a long time for the thing to die, but I think it was still plaguing Europe even up until the wars of religion in the 1600s. Fighting over what God really was, and fighting over who was going to rule and all that. And so, come the 1700s, I think people were just sick of that, and they said, we've got to try something else, and we're going to try this new way, which is to conquer nature and use our mathematical knowledge basically to dominate and create machines. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Well, yes, because it does give power, which can be used for material good. It just doesn't stay that way forever.
No, because, you start with creating a cotton gin and you end with zircon B and gassing the Jews there in Auschwitz. Not that it's a direct line from one to the other, but
well, if one took just the cotton gin example itself, I mean, he created that in order to end slavery.
Yes.
It just didn't work out that way. It made it worse.
Well, to make the case for it, the Nazis did what they did to the Jews in order to perfect the race. They were just making it better. I'm not Kanye West.
I know you're not. You're trying to be. You're trying to. Sorry, just a second. I need to punch you for that.
All right. Okay. Punch me. Go ahead.
Anything else you want to say?
No.
All right, we're good.
Okay. Kanye West, such a dork. Guy's such a dork. I don't know. Just see that.
I don't understand why anyone would have listened to him for political advice and all these years. I mean, I remember him from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
He was nuts then.
Yeah, he was nuts back then.
The
Hasn't changed.
Are vile people. What's different?
Yeah, I know. No, but now he's like, when he showed up at Alex Jones and he was like all covered in black latex, whatever it was.
I mean, I would say that the man needs some clinical help.
Yeah, that's right. That's what the comedian was saying.
Would...
Yeah, I'm not saying he's crazy. He might be a little ill. No, I'm not that. I'm just saying that, sometimes our best intentions end up being really horrible results. So.
Yes, it's true. Because you can do great damage by accident.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see a lot of people returning to study of the medieval era and study of actual philosophy and study of actual theology and study of actual esoteric mathematics. I love to see the university systems being broken up. I love to see people rethinking education. It's just good. It's good to see it.
University systems no longer do what they were supposed to do. They're not good for life.
No.
They should go.
No. Their whole program, which originally was to bring people towards piety, that's flown out the window. So, they don't do that.
There's two things that a school should do. It should, on the one hand, give you technical skill that you need in order to make a living. The second, and more important, it should make you grow as a person.
Yeah, right.
And I don't really think that our universities are doing either.
They don't do either. Yeah, you're right.
People coming out of the universities don't want to live in harmony with their world anymore.
I mean, geez.
If you're not living in harmony, you're just kind of curling up on yourself.
In some ways, they don't want to live at all.
Yeah, you don't want to live anymore.
Yeah. I saw a really good movie about that, by the way.
What movie?
I don't know. If you're interested in seeing movies, it's called Love and Monsters. love and monsters. And basically it was, okay, the premise is really funny, and it's got a lot of humor in it. It's got some gore in it, but it's like monster gore, like cartoon gore. But the premise is basically that in the future, by a really bad series of circumstances, we happen to cause every cold-blooded creature on Earth to mutate into a giant man-eating monster. And and they wiped out the human race, except for a few pods here and there that were in bunkers. Okay, and
sounds like a typical Japanese anime.
It's like that. It's like a Japanese anime, but it's done in the Western style, and it's got a lot of humor. And so anyway, the main character finally gets sick of being in a bunker all the time, and so he busts out of his bunker to go get the girl that he loves, that he's communicated with on radio, and he fights all these monsters, and he becomes a man, and it's fun, and he gets the girl in the end, and he defeats a really bad, stupid, horrible man, and it's just a fun movie. There's no like political message, and there's no shock. There's nothing even like, ooh, that was scary. It's all just kind of fun, enjoyable science fiction stupidity. But it is
actually, that's all I'm asking for out of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can't go to the Marvel Cinematic Universe anymore. So anyway, it's well worth watching. It's like I said, it's gore and some bad words, but it generally speaks pretty good. But one of the things that it was pointing out was, here are all these young men who have been in lockdown, and they're basically like incels types, and they're afraid to go out in the world and fight dragons and get the girl. And so the movie's like, you got to get out there and fight dragons, get the girl. It was fun. It was a good story.
It's a good thing for people to aspire to defeat the dragon and save monsters. Like in real life, that's what you ought to do.
Yeah, right. Right? Yes.
And incidentally, the princess shouldn't just be sitting around waiting for herself to be saved. She should be making herself worthy of being.
That's right. Use the sword. The key is around the dragon's neck. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
One of my favorite games, right? It's Don Bluth at his best. So anyway, it's what I was working on that today, and it's been something that I've been noodling for quite some time, and it's kind of fascinating, enjoyable. It explains a great deal of what is happening even now, because I think that just as we have a very deep operating system in our consciousness, I think that things that happen historically work themselves out over several hundred years sometimes.
Remember the author C.J. Cherry?
Oh, of course.
A book called Serpent's Reach.
Oh, yeah.
It's the one where the humans are living in a reach of stars that are inhabited by intelligent giant apes.
Wow.
And there's apparently only 4 hives, and therefore 4 personalities that have endured for 1 billion years. And one of the characters comments says, "We've only been here for 800 years. Can we possibly comprehend the cycles that would go with a billion-year-old intelligence?"
That's interesting. Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, America's been around for 200 plus years. How can we comprehend, the human civilization of 13,000 years or whatever it is?
On a much shorter term, I've been laughing because there's a great deal of palace intrigue going on in the Vatican, right?
There is.
Stories about it. And I get amused listening to American political commentators suggesting advice for it as, come on, you kids. Those Cardinals have been playing this game for 2 years. They know how it's done.
Yeah, I'm an American. Let me step in and show you how you should do it. Shut up, you little twat.
Kids. The pros are at work over there. Don't get me wrong.
The pros.
A vile bunch of...
Yeah, the Byzantine pros.
Well, they really are. I mean, I can't speak much as to their morality, but in terms of their craftiness.
Yeah, oh yeah. They're good at what they do.
They run rings around the ordinary people.
Yeah, that was one thing I was thinking about tonight, and I might do a video on this, is how in America especially, we tend to think that everything that's happening now is the way it's always been happening. The tyranny of the now. And especially in the church, we think, it's always been this way. Well, no, it hasn't.
It has not always been this way.
We no longer have what's called a high and a low mass. It used to be a high and a low mass. We no longer have the mass in Latin or Greek, which it used to be in Latin or Greek. We no longer have the people standing around trading cattle while the priest says his stuff behind the iconostasis, which is what it used to be. And even things like the Eucharist, which was instituted at one point, the veneration of the Eucharist and the distribution was instituted, or the bells, or all that. These things occurred at a point in history. They weren't always that way. It really floored me in my early 20s when I discovered there was actually a Mozarabic Mass, and there was an Irish Mass, and they were suppressed, and we no longer really have them.
Years ago, Will, you commented, the Catholic Church is like a bar. There are many drinks that are available at it, and it doesn't matter which you take, so long as you're having a drink.
That's right. Just have a drink there.
However, homogenizing it, making it all exactly the same, from my experience in life, that's not helpful.
No.
Sometimes all I need is a particular art form to keep me going to church, and if I don't get it, I just can't.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I cannot agree with you more. And the people that try to get back to the quote-unquote old Mass, when they do things like the Tridentine Mass, that's not how the Mass was. The Mass was far more like the Byzantine-style Mass or something like that. But you're not going to get it back too easily because the homogenization has been going on for so long. I blame Charlemagne, and Gregory the Great. I blame Gregory the Great, among others. But yes, there was a homogenization that occurred and probably was not necessarily a good thing. And it definitely caused everybody to think, well, you're weird because you're singing in Arabic, and that's not allowed in the Catholic Church.
It comes back to a point that we were making earlier. Sometimes you do need the homogenization. Sometimes you do. You can't always just go off willy-nilly in any direction. But other times, you've got to let variety grow out.
Yeah.
Or a thing just becomes dead.
Yeah.
Too much the same and unchanging.
Yep.
Dead. So there's a balance in between, like nominalism. You do have to kind of cycle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you got to stop thinking and just go have an enchilada.
There is that too.
I
can't deny.
I mean, there are people that think that everything has to be this high and noble thought, which is sort of the realist. Don't blow up my car. There's some people that that's the realist position gone ape. Everything has to be noble, and nothing to be laughed at, and nobody can ever nobody go twerking, to a song.
You can't have a Chaucer telling dirty jokes.
No Chaucer. Yeah. Exactly. And that's
going to the Cologne Mass all those years ago on New Year's Day, and after Cologne Mass, everybody went out to the bars for a sausage and beer party.
Wasn't that great?
It was actually the greatest. It was the most wonderful.
That was an awesome experience.
Joyous to be a Catholic.
Yeah. 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 So
now hit the bar.
Exactly. That was wonderful. No, that was a great experience, and totally got me out of my American thing, to be honest. Going to Greece certainly had helped to a certain degree with that. But that Germany trip, when you saw how the Germans did what they did, and of course, the Germans, they always have problems. But seeing that and the way that they perform the Mass, the High Mass, and just the buildings and all, I came back to America. I'm like, God, what the frick are we doing in this country anyway? We're debating about whether or not to have yellow felt banners hung up from, the sides of the unadorned walls. That's what we're arguing about. That's really pathetic. So, but anyway, I guess that's the state of things. That's a pretty howdy-do. That's the pretty state of things.
Here's a howdy-do.
Okay, so we've been at it for almost an hour. I'm starting to freeze, and so we need to go and blow some stuff up, and then I need to go in and have some more enchilada and go to bed. But so.
Oh, the enchiladas was not a hypothetical thing.
No. We didn't want to cook tonight, so we went to Hy-Vee and we got some pre-made enchiladas. Oh God, they were good, and probably the kids have eaten them all. So, but
you're gonna have to get them. So where are we gonna go blow up?
Let's go back to that one place with the what do you call it?
Here.
Fraud. The fraud place. Let's go back to the fraud place. Okay.
All right. Lead to the
Ready?
fraud spot.
Ready to do it?
Yep.
All right. Let's go mess some stuff up.
Okay. It was fun talking.
Fun talking with you.